8 months. That's how long the silence had lasted. No texts, no calls, not even a casual, "hope you're doing well," from my mother, who used to send the unsolicited recipes and forwarded chain emails about guardian angels. After everything I'd done for them, years of support, covering their late payments, helping them through every family crisis, they just went cold. All because I said one word they couldn't handle: no. 8 months ago, Mom and Dad sat me down over coffee and asked if I could contribute a little something to Sarah's wedding. A little something turned out to be $50,000 for a beach ceremony in Bali with imported orchids and a Swarovski-studded wedding dress Sarah had already ordered before asking anyone for help. I didn't lash out. I didn't call them ungrateful. I simply said, I love Sarah, but I won't be funding her fantasy. That was it. No drama, just a boundary. But to them, that boundary was betrayal. Tom, my older brother, called me selfish. He reminded me how Mom and Dad helped pay for my education. He conveniently forgot I worked 3 jobs through medical school while they funneled money into his failed car dealership. They acted like I owed them my success, like everything I had, my house, my salary, my peace, belonged to all of them. So I stopped trying, stopped reaching out, stopped being the daughter who always showed up, no matter how little she was seen. Then it came, a simple text, that Sunday morning, from Mom, as if nothing had happened. Dinner at 6, just us, hope you can make it, love Mom. No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement of the 8-month void. Just those words, and my heart started pounding. Not from excitement, from instinct. Because when you grow up in a family like mine, you learn to read between the lines. That wasn't a dinner invitation. It was a warning shot dressed as hospitality. After 15 years in emergency trauma, I've developed something I call emotional triage. It's like a sixth sense, the ability to feel tension in the air before a single word is spoken. The way someone smiles too hard. The way their eyes shift before they lie. The way a friendly message smells like setup. And this didn't feel like reconnection. This felt like a test, a setup. A trap baited with roast chicken and fake smiles. I stared at the screen for 5 full minutes. My thumb hovered over the decline button. I could have ignored it. I could have protected my peace. But something deep in my gut told me I needed to go. Not because I missed them, but because sometimes the only way to end the war is to walk straight into the battlefield. I could have taken the Mercedes, but I didn't. I drove my old Civic instead, faded silver, a dent in the side mirror, and air conditioning that wheezed like an asthmatic. To anyone else, it might have looked like humility. To me, it was survival. Because in my family, success doesn't inspire pride. It triggers suspicion, jealousy, and accusations of betrayal. The last time I pulled into this driveway in my black Mercedes, Mom didn't even say hello before launching into a 3-hour lecture about family obligations and how I was showing off. Funny how Sarah's BMW and Tom's brand new Audi, both parked neatly in the driveway, never triggered the same speech. But I knew why. Sarah and Tom don't make anyone feel insecure. They're dependent, comfortably so. They always need rescuing, and in our family, that's oddly more acceptable than being self-sufficient. I took a breath and stepped out of the car. The house looked the same. White siding, black shutters, perfect lawn, the kind of suburban dream you see in real estate brochures. But beneath it were landmines. Mom opened the door before I could knock. She was wearing pearls and lipstick a shade too bold, her special occasion armor. "Emily, you're finally here," she beamed. The brightness in her voice was too forced, too rehearsed. I smiled politely, not too wide, not too cold. Neutral. Clinical. The way I smile before telling a patient their test results aren't what they hoped. As I stepped inside, the air was thick with cinnamon and tension. She was making roast chicken. That was the second red flag. Mom only made her signature roast chicken for 2 reasons: when someone died or when she wanted something. The dining room was dressed to impress: white tablecloth, polished silverware, napkins folded into swans, and the good china, the one with the blue floral pattern, she only used twice a year. Dad was already seated at the head of the table. His hand rested on a manila envelope, subtle but deliberate. Tom sat to his right, Sarah to his left. Both looked up at me with expressions that said, "We've been waiting." And just like that, I knew. This wasn't dinner. This was strategy. I had just walked into a negotiation, only no one had told me I was on the losing side. The clinking of silverware was the only sound in the room. No one talked about work. No one asked about the weather. No one even asked how I'd been, which honestly was a relief, because any attempt at small talk would have felt like a lie, and we were all out of lies. We sat in silence, eating roast chicken off fine china, while the tension sat with us like a 6th guest at the table. But my eyes kept drifting back to the envelope, that manila envelope, neatly placed, perfectly centered in front of Dad's plate like a place card that didn't belong. He hadn't moved it once, hadn't shoved it aside, hadn't tucked it away in a drawer. No, he wanted it there, on display, as if to say, "We'll get to this, but not just yet." Tom made a show of slicing his chicken. Sarah sipped wine with the smug grace of someone who already knew the ending. And Mom, she kept flashing me that tight-lipped smile. Too sweet, too rehearsed, too dishonest. The air was heavy, not with grief, but with performance. This wasn't a family dinner. This was a stage. And that envelope? That was the script. I looked at it again, creased slightly at the corner, thick with papers, its flap sealed, but practically humming with energy. I didn't need x-rays or a scalpel to know what was inside. I could feel it. Every doctor learns how to diagnose without words. This was no different. That envelope contained the reason I was here. Not love, not reunion, not forgiveness, just paper. Paper that would rewrite the future of this family and attempt to erase me from it. And they all knew it. That's why no one touched it, because once it opened, there'd be no turning back. Dad cleared his throat. That sound, deep, deliberate, had always meant one thing growing up. Listen up. Something serious is coming. He straightened his posture and finally placed both hands flat on the table. Everyone froze. Sarah leaned back like she was waiting for dessert. Tom folded his arms, a smug little smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Mom lowered her fork and dabbed the corners of her mouth with a napkin, preparing for the next act. Then it came. Then Dad began, "Your mother and I have updated our will." I didn't blink. "We've decided," Mom took over, her voice soft and sickeningly smooth, "that given your financial stability, you won't be receiving any inheritance." Silence. So loud it almost rang in my ears. No gasps, no shame, just expectation. They were watching me like a glass about to crack. Tom broke first. "Come on, Em, you're a doctor. You make more in a month than we do in a year." Sarah chimed in, twirling her engagement ring, which, for the record, I knew she hadn't paid a cent for. "You turned your back on this family when you refused to help with my wedding. Family supports family." And just like that, it wasn't about the will. It was about punishment, about putting me in my place. This wasn't about fairness. This was about control. And control disguised as love is the most dangerous kind of manipulation. I set down my fork. The sound of it clinking against the fine china was somehow louder than Sarah's voice had ever been. I looked around the table, at my parents who had just erased me on paper, at my siblings who looked ready to celebrate the execution, and I smiled. Not bitter, not broken, but clear. I stood up, pulled my chair back slowly, and said the words that made the entire room freeze. Then don't expect a single cent from me either. Not now, not ever. Tom's smug smile faltered. Sarah's ring stopped spinning. Mom blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" Tom barked. "It means exactly what I said," I replied calmly. "Don't call me when there's a medical emergency. Don't call me when your bills pile up. Don't call me when something goes wrong and you need someone to fix it, because that person no longer exists for you." The betrayal had been theirs, but the boundary, that was mine. And I was done pretending that love meant submission. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for the first crack to appear. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of a back-to-back double surgery. 1 heart valve repair, 1 ruptured spleen. My phone buzzed in my locker. 5 missed calls, all from Tom. By the time I scrubbed out, it had jumped to 9, then 12, then 17. No voicemails, no texts. Just repeated, frantic calling, like someone trying to break down a door. I didn't answer. For the first time in years, I let the silence speak. It wasn't revenge, it was clarity. Because, you see, Tom never called to ask how I was. He only called when he needed something. And now, he did. The 18th call didn't come from his number. It came from the hospital. My hospital. "Dr. Harrison? Your brother Tom, he's in the ER. Severe abdominal pain. He's asking for you." My answer was automatic, polite, professional. "I'm not available. Any of our general surgeons can assist." There was a pause, then a quiet voice, hesitant, uncomfortable. "He's having difficulty with the payment process. He says you usually handle it." Of course I did. For years, I'd been the one smoothing over insurance gaps, waiving fees, signing quiet internal memos to make sure my family didn't have to face the real cost of healthcare. But today, that ended. "Treat him like any other patient," I said softly. "Let him experience what most people do. Because sometimes the only way to wake up is to hit the floor first." Tom was diagnosed with acute appendicitis. He needed emergency surgery within the hour. But without insurance, with bad credit, and no Emily to run interference, he faced the full price tag, $35,000. And for once, he had to feel what it meant to live without a net. 1 week after Tom's ER visit, Sarah posted a photo on Instagram. She was in Aspen, wrapped in a designer ski jacket, latte in one hand, captioned with "Self-care is not selfish. #Aspen vibes, #healing energy." I saw it during my night shift break. Tom was still recovering. The rest of the family was silent. And Sarah, she was on a mountain, smiling like none of it mattered. Classic Sarah. If there was a crisis, she escaped it. If someone else struggled, she retreated into luxury. She didn't solve problems, she posted over them. But Aspen didn't care who she was. Aspen had ice and gravity and no patience for entitlement. The fall happened on the 3rd day of her trip. Black diamond slope, too fast, too confident, a clean twist of the knee followed by a sickening pop. By the time she hit the snow, she couldn't move. Ski patrol airlifted her out. At the private clinic, they told her she needed a specialist, preferably orthopedic, preferably soon. But there was a catch. The specialist didn't accept her insurance. Payment was needed up front. That night at 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Sarah, voicemail 057, Emily, it's me. Please, I'm in Aspen. I tore something. They said it's serious. I know what Mom and Dad said at dinner, but I'm your sister. Please, Em, I don't know what to do. They won't even let me schedule surgery without a card. I need you." I listened to the whole thing, once, then again, and then I hit delete. Not because I hated her, but because I loved myself more. Sarah's entire life had been a performance, but this fall, it wasn't staged. This time, reality didn't care about hashtags or curated feeds. This time, she was truly on her own. And for once, I let her stay there. It didn't happen all at once, but like a leak in a dam, the cracks were now visible. First Tom, then Sarah, and now everyone was waiting for Emily to show up, like she always had. But I didn't, and for the first time, they began to understand what that meant. You see, for years, I was their invisible safety net. No one talked about it, no one thanked me for it. But when a bill was too high, when insurance didn't cover something, when a specialist refused to schedule without referral, Emily fixed it. Emily knew someone. Emily called someone. Emily paid. Emily showed up. But I didn't have doctor before my name to be a walking ATM. I earned it to save lives, not to carry ungrateful ones. Now Tom was stuck in collections. Sarah was stalled in physical therapy with the cheapest provider she could find. Mom stopped posting family photos. Dad stayed quiet in their group chat. Because they all finally saw it. The net was gone. The quiet web of support stitched together over years by my sacrifices had been cut, not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. And when it snapped, they didn't fall a few inches. They crashed. Because the higher you've been lifted by someone's love, the harder it is to land when that love finally says, enough. It was 3:02 a.m. when the phone rang. I knew. It wasn't a wrong number, it wasn't a late-night check-in, it was that kind of call, the one that shatters whatever sleep you're pretending to get. I let it ring twice, 3 times, then I picked up. Emily, my mother's voice cracked, soaked in panic. It's your father. He collapsed. Chest pain. They think it's his heart. We're at St. Mary's. The hospital said he needs surgery, but they won't begin until we sort out payment. Emily, please. I stood in the dark, phone pressed to my ear, heart steady but cold. She sounded nothing like the woman from that dinner. Not polished, not composed. She sounded desperate. Like someone who just realized the person she pushed away was the only one who could save her now. What she didn't know was that I already knew. I had gotten the page earlier as Chief of Emergency Surgery. I'm notified when critical cardiac cases come through, especially those flagged as high risk, no coverage. I had seen my father's name on the board 2 hours before the call came. I had walked past the operating room. I had seen him, lying motionless, hooked to monitors, breath shallow, skin pale, but I hadn't gone in, not yet. And now, standing in my scrubs, bathed in hallway fluorescent light, I spoke into the phone like I was reading a chart, calm, detached, controlled. He needs open heart surgery. The top cardiac surgeon in this city is Dr. Williams. He only takes patients with specialist referrals, usually from me. There was silence. Not disbelief, not outrage, just the sound of realization settling in. Emily, we'll change the will. We'll fix everything. Just please. But this wasn't about the will anymore. This was about years of being used, of being the safety net, the golden goose, the one they only loved when they needed saving. And now, the man who signed my name off a document was waiting on me to sign his name onto a surgical referral. Poetic, isn't it? I had been there for hours, not in the room, but close enough to hear the monitors beep. The cardiac wing of St. Tom? Mary's was quiet at night. Quiet in that eerie electric way hospitals get after 2 a.m. Machines hum, fluorescents buzz, time bends. I stood by the observation window, hands in my coat pockets, heart perfectly still. Inside, my father looked smaller, fragile. Not the towering man who used to slam his fist on the dinner table and say, "My word is final." No, this man was curled up in pain, sweat on his brow, IV in his arm, fear in his eyes. But even as I watched him, I didn't move, because Emily, the daughter, was done being invisible. Now, only Dr. Harrison remained. I watched the nurses adjust his oxygen. The monitor showed elevated heart rate, dropping oxygen saturation. He was running out of time and options. Behind the glass, I saw Mom pacing. Sarah clinging to her designer purse like it could fix something. Tom was on the phone, maybe calling someone, maybe pretending to. But no one looked at the window. No one knew I was already here, watching, waiting, choosing, because this time they weren't going to demand my help. They would have to ask, with honesty, with humility, and until then, I would wait. I didn't walk into the room, not yet. I stood at the nurse's station, still watching, still deciding. That's when my phone buzzed again. Mom, again. This time I picked up. Emily? Her voice cracked. They won't operate until we figure out the finances. They said he needs Dr. Williams. He's the best, right? You know him. Can you please? I let the silence stretch, not out of cruelty, but to let her hear herself. Then I replied, Dr. Williams only takes patients by referral. And yes, those referrals come from me. So you'll call him? You'll talk to him? She asked. No. That single word hit harder than any scream I could have mustered. Emily, please. You disinherited me, I said. Remember? Because I was too successful, because I didn't need the family. Well, now the family needs me, and I've decided you don't get to need me anymore. Silence. Then panic. You can't do this. He's your father, Sarah snapped over the phone. And I'm your sister, the one you humiliated in front of a table full of china and legal documents. The one you said didn't deserve anything because she had everything. You all decided I didn't belong. And now you want me to fix what you broke? I shook my head even though they couldn't see it. Let them find another specialist. Let them face the same system I've been shielding them from for years. The truth hit like a defibrillator. Without my connections, they were nobody in the system. No priority, no access, just another uninsured family hoping for a miracle they didn't pay for. You wouldn't really do this, Tom murmured. I stared straight at my reflection in the dark glass. Watch me. And I hung up. For a moment after I hung up, there was silence, but not peace. The kind of silence that comes right before glass shatters. The kind that holds every unspoken truth like a ticking bomb. Behind the hospital glass, they broke. Mom collapsed into the nearest chair, shoulders shaking, hand trembling over her mouth like she was trying to hold back reality. She had never looked so old, so small, so helpless. And I wondered, was this the first time she realized that love with conditions wasn't love at all? Sarah paced like a trapped animal, the usual smugness gone. No ring flashing, no Instagram-ready composure, just panic, real naked panic. She wouldn't just let him die, would she? Sarah's voice cracked. Tom didn't answer. He couldn't, because he knew. He'd seen that look in my eyes, the one that says, I'm done being used. Then came the whispering, frantic phone calls, attempts to reach out to other specialists, questions at the nurse's desk. Can we transfer him? Can someone else pull strings? Can we pay in cash? But every door they knocked on closed right behind them. Because in this city, every top cardiac surgeon knows me, knows my referrals, knows my judgment. And when I go silent, they listen. That night, for the first time in their lives, my family experienced what it meant to be just another patient. No favors, no shortcuts, no Emily. Just fear and consequences. The next call didn't come in panic. It came in humility. That's how I knew the game had changed. The caller ID said, Mom. Same name, different tone. I answered. Not cold, not kind, neutral, like a doctor reviewing a chart. Emily, we're ready to talk. Her voice was low, no edge, no guilt-tripping. No bargaining, just a woman who had finally understood that her daughter was no longer a safety net, but a gatekeeper. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply listed terms. First, Sarah and Tom get jobs, real jobs. No schemes, no startups with dad's money. Salaried, reportable, with taxes. Second, you and Dad begin weekly family therapy. Not a one-time session, weekly, minimum 6 months. Third, no one, and I mean no one, asks me for money. Not for bills, not for favors, not even just this once. There was a pause on the line. Then a voice I hadn't heard in years, Dad's. If we agree, will you help? I let the question settle. Let the power of the pause remind them that this wasn't a negotiation anymore. This was my courtroom now. If you agree, I said quietly, then I'll call Dr. Williams. That was the moment they realized something deeper than any inheritance could ever teach. They hadn't lost access to my money. They had lost access to my trust. And earning it back came with conditions. I don't make empty threats. Never have. That's what makes them terrifying. So when I told my family I had conditions, I didn't just mean boundaries. I meant contracts. At 10:07 a.m., a man in a navy suit arrived at the hospital, briefcase in hand, neutral expression. Not a doctor, a lawyer. Miss Harrison, he said to me, everything's ready, just need signatures. Inside the consultation room, my family waited like defendants in court. No more smugness, no more entitlement, just nervous glances and the scent of desperation. Mom's hands trembled. Tom refused to make eye contact. Sarah had gone pale. What is this? Mom asked, eyes flicking to the folder. A written agreement, I said calmly. You want Dr. Williams, you want me to pull every string I've ever earned to keep Dad alive? Fine, but this time we do it legally. 3 pages. Straightforward, non-negotiable. Page 1, Sarah and Tom must be employed within 30 days. Proof required. No loopholes, no fake LLCs. Page 2, weekly family therapy for a minimum of 6 months. Any missed session voids the agreement. Page 3, 0 financial contact with me ever again. No loans, no favors, no guilt trips. All signed, all notarized, all enforceable. This is extreme, Tom muttered. No, I replied. What was extreme was being erased from your lives while being expected to save them. This is structure. They signed, one by one. And for the first time, I saw them as something other than family. I saw them as people who finally understood consequence. Silence, thick and suffocating, like the moment before a verdict. No one moved. The folder sat on the table like a loaded gun. And then Sarah broke. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she grabbed the pen. This isn't fair, she whispered. You're punishing us for needing you. I didn't flinch. I didn't soften. No, Sarah, I'm punishing you for using me. She cried harder, but she signed. First page, second page, third page, done. Tom's turn. His jaw was locked so tight I could hear his teeth grind. He didn't look at me, didn't say a word, just clenched the pen like a weapon and signed. Each stroke heavy with resentment, each page defeat. Then came Mom. She didn't cry, didn't argue, didn't even blink. She stared at the pages for a long, long time, then quietly reached for the pen. You were always stronger than we knew, she said, almost like a confession. And with that, she signed. 3 signatures. 3 lives shifted. And I didn't feel joy or revenge, just release. For the first time, I wasn't the emotional crutch. I was simply Emily, human, respected, and finally free. The paperwork was signed, the ink was still drying, and I made the call. Dr. Williams, it's Harrison. I have a case. He didn't ask for backstory. He trusted me. Because in our world, one sentence meant everything. I'm sending someone. Treat them like your own. By noon, my father was in the operating room, and Dr. Williams, the man who charged $25,000 per hour, was scrubbing in pro bono. No billing, no special thanks, just surgical steel, latex gloves, and focus. Outside, my mother wept. Tom paced like a caged animal. Sarah stared at the floor, lips trembling. They didn't understand. This wasn't forgiveness. This wasn't a warm family reunion. This was protocol. Because I didn't bring Dr. Williams out of pity. I brought him because I said I would. Not because they cried, not because they were blood. Because I don't break promises, especially the ones that have nothing to do with love and everything to do with principle. And as I watched my father being wheeled into recovery, I didn't feel close. I felt clear. He would live. Not because he deserved it, but because I refused to let their betrayal turn me into them. She showed up late, in heels too high, with a resume that screamed privilege and no clue what a printer queue was. Sarah Harrison, daughter of legacy, now receptionist. The first week was rough. She forgot to forward calls, misused the coffee machine, spilled toner all over her cream-colored blouse. People rolled their eyes, whispered behind her back. Some even bet she wouldn't last 5 days. But something shifted. By day 6, she was answering phones like a pro. By week 2, she knew who liked which coffee. By week 4, she stayed after hours to help with inventory. One afternoon, her manager caught her laughing with a delivery guy. Genuine, not forced, not calculated. And when the day was done, she didn't rush to her car. She sat at her desk and just breathed. I didn't know work could feel this grounding, she later told me, like I belonged to myself. She started packing lunch instead of ordering Uber Eats, wore flats, kept her makeup light, and for the first time in 28 years, Sarah Harrison woke up not to be admired, but to be useful. And she liked it, not out of guilt, but because for once, she wasn't Emily's sister or Dad's favorite. She was just Sarah. Tom was always the ideas guy. Slideshows, elevator pitches, buzzwords like disruption and synergy. He could talk for hours about businesses he never built. Because why build when Emily always paid the rent? But now the free ride was over. No more emergency transfers, no more sister bailouts. Just Tom, a laptop, and a bank account with $214.37. He tried pitching to VCs. They laughed. He tried crowdfunding. Crickets. So he did the one thing he never imagined. He got a job. Sales. Commission only. Cold calls. Rejections. He hated it. But he showed up. Month 2, something clicked. He started understanding people, their needs, their doubts, their pain points. And in that noise, he saw a gap, a real one. So he built something small, scrappy, imperfect, real. By month 5, he made his first real $1,000 from his own client with his own invoice. No favors, no family. He sat in his cramped studio apartment staring at the PayPal confirmation and cried. "I earned this," he whispered. "Me, not Emily, not Dad. Me." For the first time, Tom Harrison wasn't a dreamer. He was a builder. They didn't go willingly. Therapy was Emily's condition, but to them, it felt like punishment. Her father scoffed. What could some stranger possibly tell me about my own children? Her mother adjusted her pearls and muttered, "We did our best. Isn't that enough?" But Tuesday came, and they showed up. The office was warm, neutral, safe, but the silence was not. The therapist didn't ask about Emily. She asked about them. When was the last time you apologized to your children? What does love look like in your house? Do you know what it's like to be invisible? Questions that hit like bricks wrapped in velvet. Week 2, Emily's mom cried. Not for what she did, but for what she refused to see. "I thought success meant she didn't need us," she whispered. "I didn't realize it meant she needed us to see her." Emily's dad clenched his jaw, but then he said, "I raised a daughter who could walk away. That's not failure. That's what strength looks like when you miss it. They began listening, not defending, not blaming, just listening. And for the first time in decades, they didn't speak as parents. They spoke as people. Flawed, learning, real. They still made mistakes, still said awkward things. But Therapy Tuesdays continued. And slowly, they stopped showing up out of obligation and started coming back out of hope. They called another dinner. Same table, same china, but this time no manila envelope, no tension, just calm. Tom came straight from a client meeting, still in his wrinkled shirt. Sarah arrived after work holding a Tupperware box and smelling faintly of copier ink. Emily, she came too, quiet, observing, but this time she didn't park across the street. She rang the doorbell. After the meal, their father cleared his throat. "We updated the will. Again," he said, "everything will be split equally." He looked at Emily, but she didn't react. She didn't need to. Tom nodded, sipping water. Sarah smiled, but didn't say much. Nobody asked how much or when, because now they all had something greater. Tom had his startup. Sarah had her independence. Emily had her boundaries and kept them. The will? It wasn't a victory. It wasn't a gift. It was just the right thing. Finally done. For the first time ever, the money didn't feel like a win, because the real inheritance was dignity. The stage was simple. A few banners, a polished podium, a room filled with white coats and heavy legacies. Emily was being sworn in as Director of Emergency Medicine at the Mayo Clinic. She had given countless keynote speeches in her life, but this wasn't for doctors. It was for her family. Tom wore a real suit, not rented, not borrowed. Sarah turned off her phone for once fully present. Her parents sat front row, her father adjusting his tie with trembling fingers. As Emily stepped to the mic, the room fell still. She didn't start with her credentials. She started with a sentence no one expected. For a long time, I thought saving lives was my job, but now I realize saving family is a choice, and boundaries are part of love. There were no tears, just stunned stillness. And when the applause came, it was thunderous. Afterward, a photographer asked for a family photo. Emily almost said no, but then she saw it. A look in her father's eyes she hadn't seen since childhood. Pride, not control. And in her mother's smile, not pressure, but peace. They stood together, the five of them. No one leaning on her, no one shrinking from her, just standing, side by side. Click. The flash captured more than an image. It captured a moment, one that had taken a lifetime to earn. That photo now hangs in the Harrisons' living room, replacing the old family portrait, not because Emily had changed, but because everyone else finally did. For years, the white coat had been her armor. In it, she had stitched herself into every crisis, every need, every, "Can you help just one more time?" But in that living room, beneath the newly hung family portrait, Emily stood not as the family's fixer, but as a daughter. No one asked for favors, no one begged for loans, no guilt trips, no silent expectations, just laughter over coffee, jokes that didn't sting, and for once, questions about her life, not just her job. Her dad looked at her mid-conversation and said, "I'm proud of the doctor you've become, but I'm even prouder of the woman you've chosen to be." That was it. No tearful hugs, no overdramatic apologies, just a sentence that undid a decade of silent imbalance. The white coat stayed folded that day. Not because she quit, but because for once, she didn't have to wear it. She was still strong, still capable, but she wasn't their emergency exit anymore, and she wasn't angry. She was free. For the first time, being the successful one didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a boundary. And the white coat, it didn't mean surrender. It meant identity, on her terms. For a long time, I thought boundaries were selfish. That saying no meant I was a bad daughter. That stepping back made me cold, ungrateful, unloving. Emily, walking through a quiet hospital hallway, coat slung over her shoulder. Her family having dinner, laughing, talking, but this time with no weight on her shoulders. Sarah carrying groceries alone. Tom typing in his home office, determined. But now I know setting boundaries wasn't me giving up. It was the only way I didn't lose myself. It wasn't punishment. It was survival. Emily visiting her parents not in crisis, but for coffee. They sit outside. No drama, just peace. I didn't stop loving them. I just started loving me too. Emily walking into the ER again, not as a savior, not as a martyr, but as a whole person. The screen fades to black. Words appear. Respect isn't taken, it's modeled. Love isn't begged for, it's earned. In the end, it wasn't about the money, not the house, not the will. It was never about what we had, but who we chose to become. Scenes fade in, Tom mentoring interns at his co-working space. Sarah organizing charity boxes with a tired, proud smile. Mom and Dad holding hands at a community therapy event. And Emily standing at a podium giving a keynote at a medical ethics conference. Calm, grounded, whole. What I inherited wasn't measured in dollars. It was healing. It was balance. It was a family finally learning to love without expecting to take. Cut to black. Growth is the only inheritance that can't be stolen. Fade in, call to action. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and share. And if you're on your own healing journey, we see you. If you've ever been the one who gave everything and still felt like it was never enough, if your success was met with silence, or worse, resentment, you're not alone. Cut to black screen with gentle piano music. Words appear, your story matters, your voice is valid, and your worth was never tied to their approval. Share your story in the comments. Let someone else feel seen. Let this space be a place where survivors become storytellers and pain becomes power. Comment below. Subscribe for more stories that speak the truth. And remember, family isn't defined by DNA, but by respect. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought in boardrooms or operating rooms, but at the family dinner table, where expectations, guilt, and silence have been simmering for years. Emily's story reminds us, you are allowed to succeed without apology. You can set boundaries without guilt. You don't have to bleed to prove your love. Your worth is not measured by how much pain you're willing to carry for others. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say, no more, I love you, but I love myself too. That's not selfish, that's healing. If Emily's story touched something in you, don't scroll past. Like, subscribe, and share your own voice below, because your healing matters too, and you're never alone here.